What's up, everybody? My name is James, and welcome to a video. Here I am with Hardy Fowler, my mentor, teacher, and friend, who really got me into digital art in the first place, just through his resources that he had online. I'm happy that you took time out of your busy schedule to be on here.
Thanks, man.
So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This is great.
I have kind of a topic that I want to talk about today, but we don't have to stick to a strict guideline for the majority of it. I just want to kind of start it out with a couple of bullet points. How about a general overview of how you started out and how you got to where you are now in your art career?
Sure. Yeah, I've been a professional concept artist and illustrator for 14, almost 15 years now, so it's been a stretch. I studied graphic design in college and went on to graduate school to study medical illustration, to do medical diagrams and stuff. And that was cool. I did that for about a decade, but I always wanted to do more fun, imaginative stuff, so I started building a concept art career after hours, and it's been sort of a slow pivot to just doing that all the time now, the fun stuff, and that's been really awesome. And I teach, that's how we met. I have an online learning platform, and slowly realizing my dream of just getting to draw cool stuff and hang out with cool artists all day. So it's pretty awesome, living the art dream.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your program. I have a concept art certificate through your program. So honestly, when that ended, I literally cried because I enjoyed it so much. When I first got into digital painting, I was drawing on my old iPad before I had one that actually had pressure sensitivity.
Oh, wow.
So I was basically just using vector lines. It was ridiculous. But I got an iPad Pro finally that had, and an Apple Pencil and all of that. And I was like, I really wanted to draw again. And I had done digital just drawing on, I had this really cheap graphic tablet that I used with this old iMac years before that.
Yeah.
It was very, very cheap. And I basically just drew fan art and stuff. I didn't actually do any painting type stuff. It was all just line, and then I would just color behind the line, and that's all I did basically. But yeah, I remember I had this iPad, and I'm like, okay, I have this fantastic art software that I just downloaded called Procreate, and I'm seeing all this stuff about digital painting, so I was like, I'm gonna look for some courses on digital painting, digital illustration. I hadn't even heard of the term illustration before, really, or concept art. It was all just completely new to me.
Wow.
And but yeah, I saw your courses on Udemy, and these are pretty old courses by this point. I don't know, it was some kind of magic happened once I started, you know what I mean? I just kind of knew that this is what I want to do, and just the way that you presented it as well in the videos, it was very don't worry, everything's fine, kind of a thing. And I'm like, that's exactly what I needed at that time, because I was very just nervous about everything. So yeah, it was great. So
then digital art is for you, man, because it's so infinitely forgivable, and undo is awesome. That's sort of what brought me to digital art way back when. Was I've always liked to draw with a pencil or a pen, but this was freedom and just allowed me to create effects that I just physically couldn't create. No matter how smooth I wanted to make that charcoal, it would never look as perfect as I could make things look in digital art, which of course is why I went way too far on that. And my first 5 years as a digital painter, it all looked just Photoshoppy and way too digitally clean. So
I understand that.
Yeah,
right?
I
mentored with Anthony Jones, and
yes.
He really I love his techniques, especially is he's very let's take just some basic tool and do something amazing with it, and it's just so cool.
Yeah, we kind of always want the medium to disappear a little bit, or at least not distract from what the point of what we're creating is. There's a lot of very digital looking stuff that becomes the only thing anybody ever sees. That was sort of probably the second step into higher levels of digital art, is when I could sort of realize that perfection and exhaustive detail was not the end goal, but rather just communicating a feeling in a story and sort of letting the medium fade back a little bit, just letting the picture I had in my head translate to my viewer. That is sort of a harder trick to pull off, is not letting the medium get in the way, not getting stuck, lost in the pixels, but just trying to free your hand and your imagination a little bit. I think that's what Anthony Jones does maybe better than anybody, is simple tools. I'm not sure. I've never seen him use anything other than a round brush in the videos of his that I've watched. I'm sure.
Yeah, that's his classic. That's his. He literally, the brush is literally called Old Faithful. He doesn't even call it a round brush. He calls it Old Faithful.
I love that.
So yeah, he still does that, but nowadays he actually does like to use like textured brushes and stuff now to kind of get a more traditional look sometimes, and you can actually look at the game he's working on right now. It's like toon looking, like it's cartoonish. It's amazing that he's able to just like he's really like mastered that like realistic looking stuff, obviously, but he's also like mastered these other kinds of styles that all have their own different types of problems. It's really, yeah.
Isn't that cool?
It's great.
Even those like absolute top of the mountain industry giants are still growing and evolving and doing new things with their work, instead of just staying doing that thing that we all think is just perfection. It's time to move on and reach for the next challenge. I love that. That's one of my favorite things about being an artist, is there's no ceiling, there's no final boss. It's just keep going forward. And I'm in my 40s now and feel like I'm still not nearly at my peak, which is really cool.
It's also really cool when you look at like older videos by people that you admire and you see that, wow, they weren't as good back then as they are now,
Yeah.
And it's cool seeing that like progression, even of people that you admire, to the fact that, people post videos on the internet now and stuff, and you can see this like years of progress, I had the pleasure of having a 3+ hour meeting with Adam Duff not too long ago. And
another amazing artist and teacher and just all around great
and
dude.
He really he was basically been my advisor for this YouTube channel. He's been really helpful, and I know you had a very similar experience with him. So.
Yeah, he sort of got me started as a YouTuber too a few years back, and I used stuff he taught me with every video. So you are wise to listen to him for sure.
He loves your videos, just by the way.
Oh, that makes my day.
I'm basically wanting to talk about like being a generalist, or having a lot of different skills, like being able to do a lot of things and stuff.
Yeah.
And how we manage that, because you are somebody who can draw and paint a lot of different types of things, and I think you're the perfect person to talk to with this kind of topic, And I also want to talk about it as well, because I do multiple things as well. Like I'm also a game developer, and I'm doing this YouTube channel now. You have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
In case you guys didn't know, he has a YouTube channel. This is a cool topic to talk about, because just because you're an artist doesn't mean that you have to paint the exact same things all the time, and it doesn't mean that you have to always be painting and that's the only creative thing that you ever do.
Absolutely. And that's kind of one of the sort of difficult to answer debates about if somebody wants to have a career in concept art or game art, or the broader painting cool stuff industry. There are kind of two main strategies, and reasonable people can disagree on it. Do you specialize? Do you pick a thing, a like very specific targeted thing, characters, for example, and build your portfolio to be the best character art portfolio there could be? So that when somebody needs character art, yours is the best one. Focused, it gives them exactly what they're looking for, they get it instantly. Or do you cast a wider net and try and make a portfolio showing competency in a wide variety of subjects? So maybe characters and environments and props and creatures and, you know, what did I not say? Vehicles.
Machines,
right.
vehicles, yeah, robots, all this different stuff,
And
yeah.
sort of by accident, I became a generalist, mostly just because I don't really have a favorite. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of everything, so that's what I put in my portfolio. And over the years, I was, by each one of these individual things, I've been hired to fill that role. So I kind of kept building a more professional portfolio with characters, vehicles, creatures, environments, and props. So I sort of lucked into being a generalist, I guess, and that's been a huge help, I think, career-wise, just because sometimes those character art jobs just are not around right now. But you know what? Somebody just emailed needing an environment, so I'll do that for a while. You know, it's good to like cultivate multiple options in that way. But it's still a debate, and I still, whenever I'm advising artists I'm mentoring about which way to go, I don't really have a great answer, because you can have success with either. It's sort of just a matter of what do you as the artist want to do. But
that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, is that it really depends on what you want to do, because I don't think you should necessarily force yourself to be a specific way. You know, I think it's really just like how it's important to listen to your body, what your body's telling you, you know, for medical stuff or whatever. I think you should listen to what your mind is telling you as well, you know, because, you know, like, if you're going to be an artist, why make it something that you're suffering over, you know?
absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, because art to me is like something that you do that's like, it's like a form of liberation, you know?
Right.
And so for you to turn art into something that's like putting yourself into captivity, you know, or just like, you know, boxing yourself in, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like very counterintuitive.
Absolutely. And to invoke Adam once again, I think one of his recent videos, he was talking about a conversation he had with a student where they basically realized mid-lesson that the artist was making a character art portfolio, but they didn't like painting characters. Or maybe it was environments. And Adam was just like, why are you doing this? And they said, well, it's because that's what I'm told. That's where the jobs are. And it's like, well, the problem with that is, let's say you succeed. You know, you accomplish this difficult, unlikely challenge of launching an art career, but it's still not really what you want. Like, what kind of a nightmare would that be? Like, you made it, but it's 80% your dream, but not quite. Your dream is right next to you, but you didn't go down that path. So I think you're right. Making a portfolio, doing the art that you would want to be hired for, is sort of the only way to avoid that, kind of going with your gut. But it takes a lot of courage, and that's difficult to, you know, it's hard advice to swallow, I think, because that's scary. If I do exactly what I love, what's the guarantee that people will want to hire me for this thing that I like? So I get why that's not just, you know, an easy instant solution for everybody, but that is probably the best, most truthful advice on what should I pursue in my portfolio.
I actually remember the exact situation it was. Basically, she was asking him for advice on environment painting, basically. And he looked at her portfolio and it was all characters. He was like, do you want to paint environments? And she's like, not really, but that's that's where the industry is, kind of a thing. And she's like, looks at her portfolio and it's like all characters, and
Right.
he's like, are you sure? You know,
Right.
it's like, so yeah, basically, I mean, and it was funny because he was like, I'm not even an environment artist. You're coming to somebody who's not an environment artist asking about environment art, and you don't even like painting environments. So
Right.
it's,
All of this is backwards.
he is apparently an artist that she looks up to. So that, I mean, that just goes to show, it shows what kinds of inspirations she had. So, even her inspirations was like evidence that she shouldn't be doing environment art,
Right.
Like you said, I think it's just important to like realize like what do you actually want to do, or what do you just like are naturally inclined to do, I think is a better way to put it sometimes.
There you go.
Because
When you're
sometimes
sketching,
you don't, sometimes you can get caught up in the well, what do I want to do? What do I really want to do, that kind of thing? And you can go back and forth all over the place. I did that for a while. But I started rewording it in my head, and I was like, okay, what am I naturally inclined to do? And I just tend to draw characters. And so I was like, okay, and then it just like everything just fell in place afterwards,
that's a good way to put it. Just kind of rephrasing. It's hard to just say, what do you want out of a career, or even if art isn't a career, but just a passion. What's your goal there? But when you just sort of, what does your hand naturally want to do when you pick the stylus up? What's the first thing you just decide to tackle a blank canvas with? It's kind of an answer. It's like those high school, what should I do with my life tests where they, try and ask, what would you do if you had $1 billion or something? What's the thing that makes you happy with art? It can be a hard thing to answer. And for me, it was, I don't know, everything. I never chose. Still, in my gray-haired age, am all over the map and have had sort of phases. And it's not something that I don't think we ever have to like totally settle. But I think just in terms of what to practice, what to like work towards to get closer to whatever your goals are, it's good to ask those gut check questions, and to the extent we can as artists sort of pick a lane and go towards it, rather than kind of trying to be all over the map or switching to the flavor of the week over and over again, and finding yourself years later without much real progress, I guess.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is like you can kind of like approach it almost like I'm trying to come up with an example. I come from doing 3D stuff, and so I think in 3D terms a lot, but like if you've ever heard of ray tracing,
Yes.
It basically does all these tests. That's basically what it's doing. It's like send out a ray, see where it goes, and then bring data back, kind of a thing. I like to kind of think of that kind of way of solving problems, when it comes to like especially life issues and stuff. Sometimes it takes a while before you actually realize what you enjoy doing. You just have to have a lot of examples of you doing things in order to be able to look back and be like, you know what, I tend to draw a lot of characters. Once you have like all these samples, so to speak, of you doing art, for example, you can look back at all the things you've done and just see like what you just naturally tend to do. Just give yourself time to experiment, especially when you're starting out, give yourself time to just like try things. Do I draw vehicles very regularly? No.
Yeah.
But when it came to robots, I enjoy robots,
I find that to be a pretty similar skill set. So
you're taking the cool factors of vehicles, but you're applying them to characters still. I think that's what's enjoyable to me about like drawing Transformers, for example.
There's lots of overlap. So let's say you're drawing a robot or a transformer. That is sort of a character, a robot, and a vehicle all at the same time. Actually, an artist I'm working with currently, and I don't think she would mind if I describe this a bit. She's working on this project that's sort of like a walking, living castle. So it is all at once sort of a creature, an environment, architecture, and kind of a character. Like it's got a bit of a face. It's like she somehow came up with a piece of concept art that is everything. We're calling it her final exam. Yeah. But there's overlap is the point. So the different things you dabble in all kind of inform other things. I'm positive I am a better people artist, a character artist or just figure painter. Definitely a better creature artist because of all these cool little icky medical design and rendering tricks that I know to make things look organic and kind of gross sometimes. That comes in very handy with creatures. Every new trick you learn just makes you more nuanced and capable and confident, and it just never ends. Keeps evolving and moving forward.
With my game development, I've learned a lot about just critical thinking and being able to solve problems without getting overly emotional about it,
Sure.
One skill might actually make you better at this other one. Sometimes I don't even know how it happens, but it just happens, Although sometimes you need that information to kind of like ferment, I guess, that's another factor.
That is super true. And just to jump off of that, I find that I have to learn stuff for myself, sometimes painfully, before it actually becomes my knowledge. I'll finally do it for myself, and then I remember, oh, well, somebody told me that 7 years ago, but now I finally get it because I struggled through it and I did it for myself, and now I can do it. It's hard to just hear something academically and suddenly that is your skill set. You really have to kind of scratch around with it and make it work for you. We learn to do by doing kind of philosophy.
Yeah, I've always had to try things after I learned it.
It's purely laziness for me. Like I'll hear something and I'll just be like, okay, got it. Great. Let's move on, and I'm going to keep doing it the way that I know how to do it already because it's easy. But one day, the way I have been doing it will not work for a certain situation. So I'm forced to try that little pearl of wisdom that I filed deep in my brain somewhere, and it works. And I realize I should have been doing it that way all along, but now I know. So if you're doing the same thing for too long, it's probably a sign that it's time to shake things up and step outside of the comfort zone. Which, again, that's advice I give often that is very hard for me to take myself.
An illustration I'm working on right now during the recording of this video, and I'm actually painting it in color, and that's something that I don't do very often. I don't usually paint in color. I usually color after I do the grayscale, but I wanted to try painting in color this time to see if it actually goes faster, and I kind of like see the vision quicker, so to speak, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
That's what I was going to ask. What is your verdict on that? Would you do that moving forward, or was it weird and uncomfortable?
I would say at first it was kind of scary, but now I'm actually really loving it because it really, I enjoy painting in grayscale as well.
Yeah.
But if I'm already planning for it to be in color, I might as well try and paint it in color.
I work pretty differently depending on what the application is. I paint environments very differently from people. So something that I think is sort of the challenge with colorizing grayscale is that thing where values and hues and saturations all need to kind of add up. So that's kind of why I was curious about how your go with direct to color felt to you. Did that feel easier in that way? I would stick with that because even though it may be weird right now, I bet it will end up feeling easier and faster and eliminate problems for you. Results are what matters.
I know we've already kind of talked about this, but what are the advantages of being a generalist, for you? Because I have some ideas of advantages that have been helping me, but I want to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
Oh man, there are a lot. I mean, first of all, it's that just professional benefit of, there might not be any character art jobs available to me right now, but hopefully there will be one in these other categories. So it's like you have eggs in many baskets, which is just a nice sort of job security
Yeah.
factor. But I think what I like most is that you never get bored. In fact, it sounds hard to me if I were just one of these things, doing that every day for a several decades long career. It's cool to think what unbelievable levels of mastery you would reach with that kind of specialization, but it also sounds like surely you would get sick of it eventually and just have to go do something else in your spare time. So I feel like I kind of
Yeah.
get to do that just professionally. Really, I think I've done most of those categories this week, and that's really cool for me, is getting to jump around so much. I enjoy that a lot because I really, it would be hard for me to pick a favorite. And as a generalist, you kind of don't have to. How about you?
Yeah, and I think another like good point to make is that like most of the specialists that I've seen don't draw the same thing all the time. Even if they're like specializing in character art, I see them doing creatures and stuff. Like it's not always just human characters, it's always a little different each time, there's
Right.
always like aliens or like maybe some historical thing, or maybe these like robot characters, like Fallout kind of stuff,
Right.
or even just like fantasy, sometimes like little, mushroom people, stuff like that, there's always different kinds of ways to break things up and stuff. So even if you're a specialist, you can still keep it interesting, I think. I would say I'm kind of a specialist in a way, even though I do like robots and stuff too. I wouldn't say like robots is like I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm like a mecha artist. I'm still a character artist, but I do robots too. But the robots that I do are characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, like really everything I make pretty much is characters, but it's very broad. Like the definition of that is very broad. So I think that's a way that you can kind of specialize without it feeling like you're locking yourself into a specific route.
That's a really good point. Yeah, there's always shades of gray and nuance to all of these things. Um, I think every creature or robot, in a way, is kind of taking on some human qualities too. So again, there's overlap in everything, and all of it just informs the other tools in the kit. But that's a cool point. Being a generalist
Yeah.
is fun, and even if you are a specialist professionally, or if you feel like you have one thing, I guess even the most niche specialist artists in the world probably are doing lots of other stuff too. So it isn't that, you know, monogamous thing your entire life as an artist. There are other creative outlets.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to make that point that if you like doing characters and stuff, you can specialize without it being a completely depressing life,
That's a great point.
or if you really enjoy drawing like robots, for example, and you want to keep drawing robots,
Very
stuff
good
like that,
point. You're not
Um,
handcuffing yourself to one
yeah,
thing
you
forever.
can specialize without it being super limited. Yeah. Um, you look at like Anthony Jones, and I would say that he did sort of specialize for some years. He mostly did just like robots and monsters and pretty women. Like that was basically his three things. And he did like other things too sometimes, but those were like his three main things. But yeah, but he branched out a lot. Even though he's a character, he considers himself a character artist. He can still paint environments. Like
Sure.
he just doesn't sell himself as that. Like that's
Right.
not what he tries to get jobs doing. But
Right.
he's able to do it. And I think that kind of leads on really well to what I was wanting to talk about next, which is the advantage of being a generalist for the sake of being an art director, because you know so many different things, or even just not even just an art director, but just a director. Like Christopher Nolan, for example, like I listen to interviews by him and he says like he knows like a lot of things about all these different departments and stuff. He's like spent time actually getting to know this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why he works so well with everybody, and why most of his movies have a lot of the same staff, you know, and a lot of the same actors, you know, because everybody just gets to know each other and they really love working with each other under this one director, you know?
Right.
And, that I think that's a really good thing. Like Christopher Nolan was talking about how, like, you know, if you want to be a really good director, you gotta learn a lot. You know, you gotta learn about a lot about a lot of things, and it's not just about directing. You know,
I can imagine. That's
like
cool.
you can't just be a people manager and be a good director. You know, and
Very true
yeah.
of concept artists too, right? We have to be kind of a 5-minute expert on whatever it is we're trying to draw. If you're drawing
Yeah.
a gun or a spaceship or a creature, you need to have done that homework on how a gun works, how this creature's anatomy, whatever real world animal it's sort of modeled off of. It needs to cross that line of being plausible. Doesn't have to actually be like engineer ready, but has to convince a casual viewer that this thing could be real. I think a similar thing. I'm sure you have too, but I've picked up so many random little factoids over the years about all kinds of stuff. I really enjoy this, James. I appreciate it, and it was an honor to be asked, so thank you.
And thank you too.